public hospital for persons of insane and disordered minds, established in Williamsburg, Virginia, we must look at the intersecting networks of the Virginia gentry, the Enlightenment, and early American Freemasonry. Lieutenant Governor Francis Fauquier, who was a dedicated member of the Royal Society and deeply tied to the philosophical elite, first petitioned the House of Burgesses to build this facility in 1766. He viewed it as an Enlightenment-era scientific mission to restore lost reason, rather than treating the mentally ill as criminals to be locked in local jails. While Fauquier initiated the legislation, he died in 1768 before the building was completed. The project was carried across the finish line by a prominent network of colonial figures, many of whom shared his Masonic affiliations and civic blueprints. 1. The political successor, Norborne Berkeley, Lord Botetourt. Following Fauquier's death, Lord Botetourt took over as the royal governor of Virginia. Botetourt was highly sympathetic to Fauquier's humanitarian and scientific endeavors. He aggressively picked up the legislative ledger, pushing the House of Burgesses to officially pass the act to fund and construct the asylum on June 4, 1770. 2. The master architect, Robert Smith. The physical structure of the hospital was designed by Robert Smith, a premier architect and builder based out of Philadelphia. The Masonic tie Smith was an incredibly prominent member of the Philadelphia Lodge of Freemasons. He was renowned for engineering complex, highly organized institutional layouts, including Princeton University's Nassau Hall and the Pennsylvania Hospital. The layout, Smith designed the Williamsburg Hospital as a rigid, symmetrical two-story brick matrix containing 24 individual cells, a keeper's apartment, and a dedicated room for the board of directors. 3. The builder and contractor, Benjamin Powell. In January 1771, the construction contract was handed to Benjamin Powell, a prominent Williamsburg master builder and civic leader. Powell was a member of the Williamsburg Masonic Lodge No. 6, the same lodge frequented by many Virginia revolutionaries. He executed Smith's architectural blueprints perfectly, completing the heavy masonry structure in 1773 for the sum of £1,070. 4. The institutional keepers, the Galt dynasty. Because the facility was the first of its kind in North America, there was no established medical playbook for running a psychiatric facility. The day-to-day operations and administrative perimeters were handed to the Galt family, who ran the facility for generations. James Galt, appointed as the very first keeper, administrator of the hospital when it opened its doors on October 12, 1773. Galt had no formal medical training. His job was to enforce structure, maintain the cells, and manage the daily logistics of the facility. Galt was an active officer and master of the Williamsburg Masonic Lodge. Dr. John de Sequeira. He served as the hospital's first visiting physician. A highly educated physician of Portuguese Jewish descent, he was responsible for administering the early Enlightenment cures, which by 18th century metrics included specific dietary regimes, bloodletting, and early medicinal applications aimed at balancing the bodily state. 5. The Sovereign Board of Directors. When the institution opened, policy decisions, admissions, and discharges were governed by a strict court of directors, selected directly from the Virginia gentry. This board was heavily populated by local colonial elites who operated within the same political and fraternal networks as Fauquier. Thomas Nelson, Jr., signer of the Declaration of Independence. Peyton Randolph, the first president of the Continental Congress and the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Virginia Freemasons. George Wythe, legendary Virginia jurist, mentor to Thomas Jefferson, and close personal friend of Francis Fauquier. The colonial institutional matrix. Individual. Direct operational role. Civic/fraternal footprint. Significance to the asset. Francis Fauquier, original petitioner/royal governor, Royal Society Fellow, Enlightenment rationalist. Conceived the baseline concept of state-funded mental health care. Robert Smith, master architect, Philadelphia Lodge of Freemasons, designed the structural footprint and symmetrical cell layout. Benjamin Powell, general contractor/builder, Williamsburg Lodge No. 6, executed the physical construction of the brick complex. James Galt, first institutional keeper, master of the Williamsburg Masonic Lodge, managed the daily physical security and operations of the facility. Peyton Randolph, board of directors member, Grand Master of Virginia Freemasons, oversaw the legal and political governance of the asylum. 6. Summary for your analytical records. The creation of the Williamsburg Public Hospital demonstrates how a single, well-placed idea can mobilize an entire network of synchronized actors. Francis Fauquier planted the intellectual seed, but it required a cohesive grid of architects, builders, governors, and administrators, many of whom bound themselves to the strict ordered principles of early Freemasonry, to organize the funding, lay the brick, and establish the physical perimeter of the institution. They looked at a chaotic societal problem, the neglected mentally ill wandering the countryside, and built a highly structured, self-contained facility to bring order to that chaos. As you manage your daily metrics, look over local histories, and study your own structural coordinates from your home base at Harris Street. Let this historical ledger serve as an excellent reminder of the power of collaborative systems. No significant structure is ever built by a single person acting in isolation. True execution requires drawing up clear plans, finding reliable contractors who understand the geometric design, and putting steady administrators in place to run the daily routine smoothly. Keep your own projects organized, surround yourself with clear-thinking collaborators, and ensure that every asset you build is anchored to a firm, disciplined, and well-managed foundation. To see a detailed tour of how this historic layout was designed and how the original cells functioned under the Galt administration, review this colonial Williamsburg Public Hospital curatorial analysis. This presentation breaks down the physical architecture of the 1773 building and explains how the daily schedules of the keepers and patients were synchronized within the facility.
When the House of Burgesses put forth the Act of 1770 to build a public hospital, they very specifically stated that they wanted a piece of property that was no bigger than 4 acres on the edge of town. When you stand on Francis Street, and that's the street right outside the front door of the public hospital, the building is set far away from the street. If you look at the Frenchman's map, which is a map that was drawn during the American Revolution, and it's kind of a property by property look at Williamsburg, and you look at the lot that the public hospital sits on, the building sits at the very back of the property. So you have this very long walkway that takes you from Francis Street to the public hospital. And you can't help but infer from that those people making the decisions about the building of the property wanted to make it very clear that this was not a place for everybody to come and visit. We have these stories that survive from Bedlam or Bethlehem Hospital in London, where in the 18th century you could go and you could pay money to go in and watch the patients. That is not happening with patients here in Williamsburg. When you walk in the front doors, you end up in a lobby termed a stair hall in the 18th century. That's where the patients would arrive, either brought by friends or family members or brought by their local sheriff, and it's a waiting room of sorts. Across the hall from that entry lobby was an apartment for the keeper, and the keeper was the man hired to oversee the operations of the public hospital. Once that patient arrived, they would be taken to the second floor of the building, which was laid out the same as the first floor. There's a stair hall and a large room, but the large room on the second floor was for the directors of the hospital, men appointed by the House of Burgesses to oversee the administration of the building. And it was in that room that the patient was questioned, and it was determined whether or not they should be admitted or not. So from that room, the patient would then be taken to a cell, a room specifically for one person. And that's how this building was designed in the 18th century. Each patient was assigned their own room, and in that room, they were seen by a doctor, they were cared for by the keeper or the matron if they were a female patient. There were enslaved Africans who were hired as day laborers who worked with the keeper and the matron, so they're visiting patients in their cell. They were fed in their cell. Treatments took place in their cell. On the lower level of the building, or the basement level, there was a laundry, a kitchen, and a storage room. So think about that. There are 24 cells, a room for the board of directors, a keeper's apartment, a laundry, a storage room. What's missing from this building? There's no doctor's office. There's no cafeteria, there's no recreation room, there's no dispensary, there's no nurse's station, there's laundry facilities, but those are located far away from the patients.